The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Para-X, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
Step outside of your comfort zone. See the world with a whole new perspective. Join us and experience the unexplained on the Paranormal View.
And welcome everybody right here to the Paranormal View on the Para-X Radio Network. I want to thank everyone for being with us tonight, those listening here in the chat room and those listening from around the world. Tonight we got a great guest, recurring. Everybody knows our guest, so I won't have to really go into a whole lot, but we do have somebody that will go into a whole lot. And we got with us tonight Barbara Duncan.
Hello, everyone.
And we got Jeffrey Gould.
Hello, hello.
And I think what we'll do is just have Jeff go ahead and introduce our guest.
Absolutely. Well, our returning guest tonight is a longtime friend of the show, Cat Snider Gasch. She teams up with Henry on Paranormal View Gettysburg weekends when there are Gettysburg weekends. As a sensitive, since she was 5 years old, Cat has been experiencing the paranormal, and since then, Tabby Cat has experiences here in America, as well as, not surprisingly, in haunted Ireland, Scotland, and England. And her first book, My Life Amidst the Paranormal, is just a small glimpse into her experiences. So welcome back, Cat Gasch. Yeah, thank you, thank you.
All right, we're glad to have you back again.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, and I guess some of the things that we can actually delve into is how COVID has affected not only the people being able to go out and investigate places or try to see if they can find something that might talk to them, but also I want to know how it has affected the spirits.
Well, that is definitely something that I have experienced myself. Ever since COVID hit, and I have not been able to go out and visit some of the places that I normally would, and definitely not being able to visit with my para friends, such as yourself and all the others, and meet up. It's not only been quite an experience for us within the paranormal community to have to sit at home and so forth, but as a medium myself, it's been different because rather than going out places, I've had a number of spirits to come and visit me, but I have had an opportunity to go out to some places that I had been to in the past and done investigations. And after being there a number of times pre-COVID, I've gone back with permission from a few of these people and so forth for the locations, and tried to find out what the activity was when I was there this time round. And I have noticed that it is significantly different than what it was. And I think that's mostly because, as one person pointed out to me, which is a location that I really can't divulge, a lot of details, because some of them they would rather I didn't say. But some of these locations, you have paranormal groups coming in and out, or ghost hunts on a regular basis. And they told me straight up that ever since COVID, the activity in this one particular location was just almost non-existent. And I thought for a moment, and I asked this for the person who runs this particular location, well, why do you think that is? And they said straight up, without hesitation, it's because there's no energy for the spirits to feed off of. There's nothing there for them to use to manifest. Meaning, the equipment, the life force, the energy of the people that would be constantly walking in and out. And I have to admit, Henry, I'm really at a total loss as to why that may or may not necessarily be true. And I'd kind of like to get you guys' take on that same subject. Do you think that that is a possibility?
That or they just don't want to shovel.
Well, now, the Earth is energy. I don't necessarily think that a ghost would have to have some of our energy to do anything, because I'm pretty sure that they're able to manifest from the energy from the Earth or from around the things in the Earth. I'm not so sure that they have to feed off of the people. I think what it might be is a possibility that not as many people is coming around, and so they're just not as active.
Well, that might necessarily be true. The times that I had been to this same location just by myself over the years, no one else around, just me. And being a medium, I could still pick up on the spirits that were there. I had no problem with that. It's just that they may or may not have interacted as they would have.
You're cutting out, Cat.
Oh, am I? I
Yeah.
beg your pardon. Am I there?
Yeah, you're here.
Okay, sorry. Perhaps Jeff might be able to kind of point out a little bit, is that being an actor, you need an audience. You need somebody to recognize who you are. And you have a tendency to come across a little differently, when you have an audience. So perhaps that might be the case with certain spirits. They need an audience.
That kind of makes sense.
Well,
Yeah.
there's a lot of the spirits, though, that goes through a routine, whether you're there or not, and they probably don't even recognize somebody being there. They just do a replay kind of the same thing all the time. Whereas
Right.
the ones that can recognize people and communicate with them, that's probably the ones that might be a little more, I won't say disgruntled or upset, because there's nobody coming to visit them.
Yeah. I think that may be the case. A very good example was when I was at this one location, I had another friend with me. And I usually sometimes do not carry my audio recorder with me. I don't carry it everywhere I go. Because I'm not necessarily investigating, but I just happen to pick up on stuff. But I was at this location with this other person, and they did have the recorder with them. So the first thing that I asked of this one particular spirit that is known to be there on a regular basis, do you miss people being around? Do you miss all of the crowds that come in and try to talk to you and everything? And I kind of got the impression that this particular spirit was just standing in front of me and just staring at me. Well, the other person had one of the voice-activated recorders, and they noticed that something was picked up. So after I asked, well, do you miss people being around? Well, they played it back, and you could hear me say, "Do you miss people being around here?" And that recorder clearly came back and said, "It's nice and quiet." That was so funny. It's nice and quiet.
Clearly caught a tourist ghost.
So, there just might be a possibility that some of the locations that most people are very, very familiar with and go to on a regular basis, some of those spirits are just darn glad that they're not continuously bombarded with people that are asking them to make a noise or tap on something or to turn the flashlight on or something. They get a little annoyed after a while. So who knows, perhaps the lack of people, live people to go into these locations due to COVID. A lot of spirits are, pretty darn glad it is nice and quiet to them.
Now, since you can communicate with the spirits, how does the spirits feel about people wearing face masks?
Well, I was down at Antietam Battlefield, and I was just walking around on my own. And of course, when you're out in the open and everything like that, it's a little different. But there are still people that are, believe it or not, they are part of a tour group. So they have like a park ranger with them, to explain what's going on. And they have masks on. So I was down there one time last fall, actually during the anniversary of the Battle of Antietam. And there were a whole bunch of people around, and they were wearing masks, even though they were outside. And I had walked up the bloody lane, and I was there by myself. And I had my mask on because I had been close to these people, but then I took the mask off. And I just said aloud, "I apologize if you think that I'm a bandit or something for the mask. I hope you're not offended or think that I'm a criminal because I'm wearing a mask." And I got a very distinct impression from one person that said, "It covers your face nicely." And I'm thinking, well, damn, I'm not sure if that's an insult or not. It covers your face nicely. All right. But other than that, no, I've never really, been curious about that. I've just asked the spirits in different places, are you lonely that people aren't talking to you? And I have had a few, especially at Antietam, to answer me to say that they miss people. They miss people talking to them. So I guess it's like live people. Some people prefer to be by themselves. Some people prefer to have company. You just don't change your habits. Either you're a people person or you're not. You're either sociable or you're not.
So, this past year and so far in this year, has people actually been wearing masks in Gettysburg?
The last time that I was up at Gettysburg was last fall, and they were wearing masks in town. But once they got out on the battlefield into the fresh air and everything, they weren't. Now, I was up there, and as long as we were outside and on the battlefield, it stayed.
Is your mic plugged in good? Because it keeps kind of like being far away and then up close, kind of.
Okay, hold on a second. Let me see if I can do something here. Okay, is that better?
Yeah, for now.
I don't know what the heck is going on.
Well, go ahead and talk.
Okay. Um, well, anyway, as it was, I would have been up in Gettysburg with both Darcy and Craig, and we were out on the battlefield, and we didn't wear masks as long as we were out on the field itself and everything. But once we got inside town and we were walking together and everything, it was a little different story. You know, we put our masks on, especially if we were going to be very close proximity. Um, I can honestly say, Henry, that the majority of people, when they're out, either in my area, excuse me, or wherever I've been, when they're outdoors, they're not wearing masks. When they are indoors, they're wearing masks. But it's a little weird all the way around. But I think the spirits are probably maybe a little bit curious, depending on where you are. Now, if you're in a location where the spirits are accustomed to seeing masks, such as during the big flu 100 years ago, they would recognize what was going on. They would understand it perfectly. But some of those other spirits, no, they wouldn't recognize it. They would have absolutely no idea what the heck is going on.
It's kind of interesting because there's some locations where you'd want to wear a respirator just because of the amount of dust, lead-based paint, asbestos, everything else is in there. And they don't seem to have an issue with it, or supposedly.
No, not really. I mean, I personally, while I understand why a lot of people would want to go out and continue to do investigations, a lot of paranormal groups, they still get together and they go out and they investigate and so forth. You get bored. You want to do things. You need to get out of your house. You need to socialize and everything. I understand that. But I do know that, and I've certainly seen it on, social media and everything, where people have all of these paranormal gatherings and ghost hunts and everything, where there's, a dozen or so people, even up to 20 and 25 people involved in these things. I'm sorry, but when you're going into a location that is only like a couple of floors high, and you have to break yourself into groups of, 5 to 7 people at a time, and trying to be socially distanced at 6 feet apart, it's kind of difficult to do. And I don't really understand that. I really don't. Yes, you need to socialize. You need to be out there. But why take the chance? I don't understand it. I really, really don't.
Why not go UFO hunting or crypto hunting, which is outdoors?
I mean, there's other things you can do. There's so much you can do. Myself and the other mediums that I know, we can just sit at home and talk to the spirits. We don't have to go to a location. I get visited all the time by various different spirits. Some of them I know, and they come in all the time. Some of them, they just pass through. Or I can just go to a location just by myself and pick it up. So I really don't understand why they think that it's still perfectly okay to gather in groups of 25 or so and go into a location and be that close in proximity. How can you sit and do, say, an EVP session or a spirit box session with that many people in an 8 by 10 room and be 6 feet apart? You can't. It's dumbfounding. I don't understand it.
And I see all the time where different groups are saying, we're going here and we're going there. And I have not been any place since, I guess, since the last time we was at Gettysburg. I don't think I've been
Yeah.
to do anything else. I'd like to, but even the places that I would normally go to, like Preble County Historical Society, if I just went there by myself and with one of the people from there, I mean, we can go sit down upstairs, but I'd be wearing a mask. I mean, not just for my safety, but for theirs also.
Yeah.
And
No, I mean, these people wear masks and everything. I mean, it's not to say that they're not wearing masks, but how can you be in an 8 by 10 room with 6 people and be 6 feet apart to do an EVP session or a spirit box session? I don't understand that.
I don't either. Which leads me to another question. In Gettysburg, since the COVID shutdown, is any places opened up to allow any investigations like in Gettysburg?
No, not that I know of.
And
No.
what about the tour homes where you'd pay to go through this home and hear the history of it? Have they opened up yet?
As far as I know, the only places that they will open up right now are things like the orphanage and the Jenny Wade house. But they limit it to just so many people at a time. And mostly they make sure that they are groups of people like a family or something, or a smaller group.
Right.
That's the only way they'll do it. But right now, as far as I know, they're not allowing any kind of investigations or anything in Gettysburg at all. Because you just really can't take the chance and so forth on people not adhering to the rules. You can't be that close. I mean, let's face it. You go to someplace like, well, heck, even like I said, the Jenny Wade house or the orphanage or the Farnsworth house, or even Mr. G's ice cream, for that matter. The very close proximity that people have to be in those locations in order to do an investigation. You cannot be 6 feet apart and be safe. And so, as far as I know, no, they are definitely not allowing it. It's just not feasible. It's not practical.
But they do allow people to go out, tour around the battlefield by themselves.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
So it's
you're outdoors.
Outdoors, and if you safe distance yourself from anybody else out there on the battlefield, you should be fine.
Yeah.
And wear a mask.
Yeah, I mean, if you know you're going to be around a large crowd or whatever, like during very nice weather, as I say, when I was down at Antietam, they had tour groups that were gathered with the park ranger, but everybody was wearing a mask and they were, a distance apart. Me, I wore a mask when I knew I was going to be around people, and then I took it off when I wasn't anywhere near close. But I think the spirits kind of relate to it in some ways. It can't really put it to places like Gettysburg or Antietam, but I'm sure all over the world where masks were something of the normal, such as battlefields in France and in Germany, either with World War I, World War II, where people had to wear masks as a result of the gas that was being released, especially during World War I.
Yes.
So people got used to wearing masks. Even the civilians had a tendency to wear masks during that period of time because of the possibility of either mustard or nerve gas coming through. So I think it just depends on where you go and who you're trying to communicate with within the spirit world as to who can relate to seeing people wearing a facial covering of some sort. And just to assume that because you're in Gettysburg, that the only spirits that you're going to come across are those from the Civil War is kind of naive. I mean, you there?
Yeah, we're here.
Oh, sorry. Just because you're in Gettysburg doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be encountering spirits just strictly from the Civil War. You're going to be encountering spirits from all kinds of places if you're going to be willing to open yourself up to it. So there might just be spirits there from World War I that can relate to being, in France and in Germany. Or you can relate to spirits that were a part of the epidemic in 1910, 1911, that period. All kinds of things. You have to allow yourself to relate to them. So we can walk around with I have a cat. I have two different masks that are nothing but cats. Go figure. And so if I were to go to a location with a face mask that had nothing but cats and everything on it, the spirits might even ask me, well, why are you wearing a piece of cloth on your face with a cat on it? But you just have to allow yourself to be open to it. That's all. So I think right now with us having to wear masks because of COVID, there's an awful lot of spirits that recognize what the heck we're going through and perhaps even why.
Barbara,
It'll be interesting to see how many cases come up too, because everybody's been indoors. There are several channels which are almost explicitly paranormal programming.
Yeah.
And so it'll be interesting to see how many people are going to start reaching out to different paranormal groups saying, hey, we got this problem. We've been, cooped up all this time, and we're starting to notice sounds on a recurring basis, apparitions on a recurring basis.
Yeah.
And probably don't want to reach out right now because just having a lot of people that you don't know in your home would be bad. But certainly a little bit later, I could just imagine there being a boom of paranormal cases coming up.
Well, as a matter of fact, I have a friend of mine who lives about 45 minutes away from me, and she and I have been in touch quite a bit, and she just recently got a case from a person who said, ever since we've been staying at home, I've noticed all kinds of strange things happening in my house, and I have no clue what the heck is going on. And they called her because they knew that she was a medium and said, can you come and check things out? Well, they went and checked out this person's home and, came up with some answers and everything. And the first thing the homeowner said was, well, why did I never notice this before? And my friend told him, well, you both work. You and your husband both work, right? Yes. Well, you're very seldom home. No, that's true. We only get home at a certain period of time and, so forth. And the next thing you know, because they're home 24/7, they're noticing all this stuff. And it's apparently happening at just a particular time of the day. So it's residual. It just happens at one particular time of the day. And it turned out to have been a home that was built in the very early 1900s. And so they looked into the history of the house and they came up with a certain amount of information. And once that information was discovered, my friend went back to this person's house and confronted, the spirit and everything, and just let them know, look, you can move on. You don't live here anymore. You don't need to be here. And they moved on. No problem. But yeah, I think just because people are at home, they're noticing all kinds of stuff. I mean, they're noticing that their furnace is making weird noises, or their air conditioner is making weird noises, or maybe their cat is getting into something that they didn't realize. We're noticing all kinds of stuff that we didn't notice before, and that also includes the spirit world. If you do happen to have a spirit in your home and you've never noticed it before, you may not have noticed because you're not home at the particular time that they manifest. Certainly.
Well, and if you look at the idea that energy needs something to feed off of, then you have a bunch of people sitting around getting pent up energy, being cooped up all the time. So you have a lot more. I'm surprised there isn't a lot more poltergeist activity, just because there's a lot of people getting bored out of their minds sitting in the house.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, there was one particular instance, and unfortunately I can't really say because it's on a little more personal basis, but it was discovered that after being at home and being cooped up for so long, that all kinds of stuff was happening in their house, and things were being moved, things were being knocked off of shelves, things were being opened that shouldn't be. And I kind of asked a whole bunch of questions of this particular person and came to the conclusion that because they have a young person in their household that is going through puberty and is extremely bored and pent up and everything else, that most likely everything that is going on is because of the human element. It had nothing to do with a ghost. It had to do with poltergeist activity that stemmed from this pubescent person in the household. And I gave this, the head of the household some suggestions, and they talked to the person in their household that was going through puberty, and they finally came to the conclusion that, this person was not only bored out of their skull, not being able to be with their friends and this, that, and the other, but they were starting to throw temper tantrums almost like a darn 5-year-old, which was not good. And that kind of energy can just manifest itself. So after, I think, about a week or so of talking to their child, they finally got them to settle down. They finally got them involved in some activities that they could, get rid of some of this energy. And they called me back and said, hey, the activity stopped. we don't have all this stuff happening anymore. I'm like, cool. Sometimes that's what happens. You confront the problem and you figure out what you can do and try to solve it.
Yeah, I know. We've been here like 24/7 since the day we moved in. But I haven't had anything, so other than just talking about it here on the radio, haven't been able to go do anything, so still it's quiet here.
Yeah, well, there have been a few instances here at my home, and I think I had mentioned it before. I get visited by certain spirits on a regular basis. But it seems like over the last so many, I think probably for the last 3 months or so, the one spirit in particular really hasn't shown up as much. And when they do, I finally just ask him, I said, well, where have you been? And his answer was this. He said, there's too many people to go around. I'm like, what? There's too many people to go around? And he said, there's too many people to visit. Everybody's at home. There's too many people to visit. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. You're stretching yourself thin, no problem. If you need to go visit with your relatives rather than me, no problem. So
here comes the other aspect of this too, which is going to be once paranormal investigators are able to get out there again, they're going to be hypersensitive. Because that all the pent-up energy that the investigators have, they're going to want to see ghosts everywhere. So,
Yeah.
I mean, at some point, somebody's going to have to filter out data and evidence pretty darn close.
Yeah, I think that's probably true too. If you get denied something, it's like if you're told that you can't eat Brussels sprouts, that sort of thing. If you can't eat Brussels sprouts, then suddenly you get a taste for Brussels sprouts, but you can't have it. And then once you're able to get Brussels sprouts, you just eat them and eat them and eat them and eat them and eat them.
Bad analogy on my part, but go ahead.
Yeah, but I think that's probably the case. If you're denied something for, a very long period of time, you have a tendency to overdose on it. And when it comes to, paranormal activity and, groups going out there, I think once people are able to go out and investigate a lot more and a lot more safely than they have been, I think they're just going to be, very gung-ho. I think they're going to be so eager to find something that, what was it, in Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull, when Indiana Jones was talking about losing, or when he and the gentleman from the university got to his house, and they were talking about how everybody was looking for spies and everything. And his friend said, yeah, well, they're looking for spies in our soup. And I thought, well, yeah, in some ways that's probably a good analogy. If you are looking for something so badly, you're going to find it anywhere. And so once we get a chance to go out and investigate on a regular basis, it's going to be like sensory overload. You're going to find ghosts everywhere, because that's what you want. It's the fix that you need. It's what you want. It's what you need. And it's kind of a shame because, some of these spirits that are in some of the most well-known locations, some of them are very happy that nobody's there. They're like, oh man, I am so glad it is quiet now. Nobody's here. Nobody's going to bother me. I can just finally breathe. And then there's others that like, where's everybody? Where did everybody go? I don't have anybody to talk to. And they get lonely and they get bored too. And the next thing you know, you've got, thank you very much, Morgana. You dropped my phone. But you have, she just literally pulled my phone onto the floor. But, a lot of spirits are going to be very welcoming. They're going to say, oh, yeah, definitely. I'm glad that you're back. And then there's going to be other spirits like, oh, man, they're back.
Well, Kitty just made a very good point. And that is there's going to be probably more physical activity in some locations because the ghosts are going to go, you're back, pay attention to me now, knock the phone on the floor.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
No, I mean, I'm being serious in that.
No, I agree.
Yeah. They're going to be just like I had so much attention for so long. Now I have none. Now all of a sudden you're back again. Pay attention.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there are some locations, some of the more popular locations that people have a tendency to go to. They're going to go in there and they're going to find, either some of the spirits that they used to be able to talk to are going to be very, very quiet, or there's going to be some others that are like, yeah, they're back. Let's go ahead and do some knocking. Let's go ahead and do some footsteps. Let's give them some EVPs. I mean, people, alive people are like that. So why shouldn't people who have passed be like that? Some people demand attention. Some people just want to, okay, that's it. Eat your meal and leave.
Well, and here's the other option of this too, which is locations where the ghost may not have had an easy time of it. So prisons, for example, psychiatric institutions where the patients were probably not in the best of mental states to begin with. And all of a sudden, people are gone, then they're back, and they don't know how to express themselves in interesting ways or proper ways. So you're going to end up with maybe some interesting activity in, say, like Trans-Allegheny or Eastern State Penitentiary, right?
Yeah. Oh, I agree with that. As I say, the spirits behave the same way that live people do. If you don't want to talk to someone, if it's not something that you do on a regular basis, you're just not going to do it. But if you like to chat, then yeah, you're going to miss it. You're going to miss people being around. And once that starts up again, you're going to be yakking away, no problem. But those that have been constantly and consistently bombarded with questions over the years, I wouldn't doubt whatsoever if some of those spirits that once people go back, they're going to find they're not going to be communicating at all. Because some of them are like, oh, I am so glad. I'm glad nobody's talking to me. And oh man, they're back. This is not going to happen again. I'm not going to go through this again. No, I'm not going to turn on the flashlight anymore. I'm not going to make a noise anymore. Forget that. I mean, I would get tired of doing the same thing. You know, when I pass on, if somebody were to try and pull that crap with me on a regular basis, you would hear an awful lot of four-letter explicatives on EVPs, because I would get very tired of people telling me to do this and do that. I really would.
Why do you think?
Well, and that's one of the problems with television shows right now is ghosts have sort of become circus animals.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's like turn on the flashlight,
Yes.
touch that REM pod, you know, make a noise, do this, do that, you know, and it's,
You know,
and then you hear the oohs and ahs afterwards instead of, hey, you're communicating fine. Let's develop a conversation pattern here.
I'm sorry, but all those kind of things, I mean, they're nice gadgets, but to me, it doesn't prove it. There's a spirit there. I mean, there's a lot of other things that can be setting them things off.
Yeah. I do recall there was one time that I was at a location in Baltimore, Maryland, some years back. And even though I trusted the two main investigators who were heading up the group and so forth, I trusted them very much, especially one in particular. And yet the number of other people that were there for this ghost hunt in this location, the first thing that I noticed was there were a few people that continuously were looking at their cell phones. And my first thought was, as soon as they did something on their cell phone, it seemed like somebody's K2 meter was going off or their Mel meter was going off. And of course, the first thing they said was, oh, I'm getting a response. Well, you know, right in the very beginning, everyone was told to turn their phones off. But of course, there are some people that won't do that. They just flat out won't do it. So as soon as they start fooling with their phones, that will set off a piece of machinery. You know, I mean, it will do it in a heartbeat. Your cell phone, the moment you get a text message, it might even send a signal to a K2 meter or a Mel meter. There's just no doubt about it. And I have seen people at that particular location, on that particular investigation, with their hand in their pocket, and had someone across the room saying, I'm getting a hit off of my K2. And then I'm trying to watch, you know, I've got my eyes crossed, you know, my right eye's going right way and my left eye's going the other way, you know, looking to the person who has their hand in their pocket, to the person that's got their hand on their K2 meter, and realizing that I'm seeing movement in the pocket of the person with their cell phone to the person with the person that has the K2, and the person with their cell phone has got this big smile on their face, and I'm thinking, no, I can't even repeat it on the air. But that happens all the time. You get these people on these investigations that flat out refuse to turn off their cell phones. They just won't do it. I mean, they insist on saying, oh, I'm here, I'm at this location. You know, they're texting somebody, you know, while they're on the investigation, or they're taking photos that you don't think they can see and everything. And that's off all of these pieces of equipment on a regular basis. So the only time that equipment is really valid is if you're in, say, out in the middle of nowhere. If you're in a field somewhere where there's no electrical lines, there's nobody else around you, or you're with somebody that you know darn well has left their cell phone back in their car or something, and that thing is answering your questions. I mean, that's the only time that I can see it. I mean, I did that with Pat McCormick. We were at the David Stewart farm in Gettysburg, and he had a millimeter. And we were out in the middle of the field, and it was just the two of us. We both left our cell phones back at the main house. And we were both getting information. I was getting it mentally. He got it on his millimeter. And right after he had gotten a really interesting reading off his millimeter, we both saw a white light pass between us, and we both reacted at the same time. And we both shuddered because it was a cold breeze going between us. But it showed up on his millimeter as an energy spike. So, see, something like that is interesting. But for everybody to automatically assume that every single thing that shows up on your gadget has to be a spirit, no. Anything can set it off. Anything.
So when this was taking place, was it day or night?
It was about 11 o'clock at night.
Okay. Now, did he have a recorder with him?
He had his recorder with him. Yes.
And did he get anything on the recorder when this thing was spiking? I mean, like,
Actually,
to
yeah.
me, if you get voice on your recorder at the same time something like that's happening, to me that's more believable
Yes.
than just a light. Oh, look, they're here, blah, blah, light on, light off, blah, blah, blah. No.
No.
I gotta have,
He definitely got it.
yeah, I got to have a voice to go along with it. To me, a voice is one of the only things that I will actually go with.
Yeah. Well, Pat had one of the voice activated, and as I say, he and I were just walking along in the field, and then this white light went past literally between us and went on, and I let Pat know that I thought it was a very, very young soldier. And Pat asked, are you a Confederate soldier on this property? That's what he asked on his recorder. And at first there wasn't anything, and then we could actually see another white light ahead of us. And neither one of us said anything at the time, but we both kind of looked at each other. And then I said, is that you showing yourself to us? And Pat said, well, something came up, and he played it back. And when you hear me say, was that you that showed up, that showed yourself to us? And that response was, yes'm, I did. In a very heavy Southern accent, yes'm, I did. And as we continued to walk and everything, I smelled something kind of funky. I mean, it smelled really bad, and I just said, phew, man, Pat, I think there's something died out here. And he stopped a moment, and he says, hold on, something showed up. And he played the recorder back, and you hear me say, man, something stinks, it smells like something died out here. And a very distinctive voice said, dead animal.
Dead animal. All right. Coffee in the chat room had a question. Wanted to know if anyone has heard anything out of Amityville at all or lately.
Personally, I don't think that was anything at all. There has been so much talk about whether or not Amityville was actually haunted at all. And even Ronnie DeFeo in prison admitted that he committed the murders and everything, not because he was hearing voices or anything, but because he just flat out hated his frickin' parents and he was on drugs. And everything that happened after the DeFeos moved out, after everything was closed up and the new family moved in, there has not been anything at all since the movie came out that anyone since then, anyone that's lived in that house since that time, since the movie came out, has ever experienced anything paranormal. Anything.
I think
so.
I think it was just a big gimmick.
Yeah. It's a hateful thing to say, but I think the whole thing just came down to a lot of media. I think it had to do with money and so forth. I mean, my goodness, Henry, and of course you're getting ready to come up on the top of the hour, so I can talk about it later. But the whole thing about the Exorcist thing, oh my goodness. During the second half of the hour, if you want me to talk about that, oh my goodness, the stuff that I literally know about the Exorcist, personally.
The story on which the book was based?
Yeah, I mean, the things that, the truths and the untruths, the things that I really do genuinely know about that.
I actually once held the actual journal.
You did? I'm sorry, what?
The Booth brothers were at a paranormal weekend I attended on the Queen Mary, and they owned the book, the original journal of the exorcism and what had happened, what went down.
Okay. All right. Well, that's going to be an interesting conversation after the break. Then that'll be cool because I know somebody that knew the boy that it actually happened to. I mean, I lived no more than 4 miles away from where the people lived.
Wow.
So I know a little bit about it.
Sounds good then. Barbara, you got anything before we go to break?
No, we should probably go to break.
All right then. We can go ahead and take a little early break because we'll let Jeff and Kat talk about everything after the break. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
All right. So with that, you can stay tuned. We're going to take us a little quick break, about 5 minutes or so. Remember, your phone or mics are live, so just don't say anything. And we will be back shortly then. How's that sound?